Hello, everybody. Welcome to Go Big with Micha, the Confidence series. I am your host, and I am a coach and writer and speaker who works with women, particularly to help them lead with confidence in male-dominated environments. That's what I love to do, and I am very, very excited about talk. Oops. We're having trouble. We're having trouble. So we might not be live. I don't know why. Let me go on LinkedIn and see if we are there. Hold on. We are not. Huh. What? What?
I do see us live.
Do you see us live?
Yeah.
Waiting for broadcast. Do you see us live when you go to LinkedIn?
I do.
Cool. Well, then we'll just continue. I can't, but oh, yeah. Kathy, thank you. Joanna, thank you. Okay, we are live. So, okay, you know who I am now. And today I am super excited to talk to Diane Lam. So Diane is a operations strategist to online service providers. So she works with business owners primarily and strategically guides them towards scaling to a multi-six-figure business, especially working 25 hours or less a week, which is something I had never been interested in my life, but right now I am. So I'm glad to be talking to Diane. Diane has her expertise has been featured in countless publications on Forbes, Bloomberg, Business Insider, USA Today, you name it. And Diane is also a good friend of mine and a member of my Power Squad, which is girlfriends, right? Girlfriends who are also badass businesswoman. So I'm super excited. I totally, when she gives me advice, I totally do what she says, and it always works. So I totally vouch for her expertise on my mini scale. Yeah, and I am very glad that we have a couple of people here who already said hello. Nice to meet you, and absolute nice to see you here today, I should say. And please, as I talk to Diane, as I ask her questions, as Diane answers, feel free to pop your questions in the chat because obviously we are live, no matter what StreamYard says, and we can see your comments. So please feel free to interact with us. And if we don't get around to your question, then of course we will be in touch later. And Diane encourages you to connect with her here on LinkedIn, or if you see that later in a replay, then still reach out and we'll both be happy to connect with you. So welcome, Diane. Good morning.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm super excited to have this chat with you. Yeah, I can't wait.
Absolutely. So I would like to start us off on a bit of a personal note because the very first LinkedIn Live I did was with Katrina on self-trust. And as I was talking to Katrina about that topic, I thought I need to have Diane on this too soon because that is a conversation we've had a lot too. So I would like to start a little bit with your personal story before we talk about how you help others, because I think that is very interesting how self-trust and confidence have played out for you. So maybe you can take us a little through your journey.
So, I mean, I did all the right things, right? All the quote unquote right things. Growing up, I went to the school, I got the internships, I got the job on Wall Street right after college, and I did all the right things at the job. I stayed late, I worked hard, I didn't like make excuses or complain, like, all the things that your parents tell you to do to be a good employee.
Culture, entire society, right?
Yeah.
Not only your parents, like they have support there.
So that all felt really safe because that's what everyone is taught to do, right? Like,
Mhm.
so I felt really confident, like, hey, this is my path because well, this is what everyone does, right? So it was laid out for me.
Or wish they could do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when it got to a place where I'm like, I'm just really not satisfied with my work anymore. I'm not satisfied, like, with the politics that are involved in a kind of like as you climb the corporate ladder, like it became one of those tug and wars between like, well, what do I actually want and what's laid out for me? Because it's really easy, I think, to be really certain and to feel a great amount of confidence about something that is really straightforward, what is laid out for you, what you're certain about, what you know, or what you've been taught is true. And it's
Yeah.
harder to trust something, even if you kind of want it, when it's uncertain, you don't know. And that was a big part of like me taking the leap where I'm like, I don't really know, but I think I can figure it out. I feel like I can figure it out. Um, and my entire entrepreneurial journey since then has been really trusting my gut and creating an environment where I can feel confident about what I'm doing because I can see, like, I can minimize the uncertainty in what I'm doing. And so that's really how I landed where I'm at today. And that trust myself has really come from the fact, like, okay, I now know, like, I can be comfortable in the uncertainty. I know I can figure it out. Nothing is ever so, like, so important, so big that you can't fix it down the road or you can't change your mind or whatever, right? So those are things that I had to learn to trust in order to actually be like, you know what? This is what business is. There's always going to be uncertainty, and I'm still confident in moving forward because I can trust in myself and I know that I can figure it out no matter what comes my way, right? And I think that is a big part of entrepreneurship, of being a business owner, is just having that certainty and knowing, like, I can figure this out. Like, I can trust that I can get through this.
I love that. That's actually a sentence I use a lot is this, I figured out a lot of stuff before. I can figure this out. So that is one of the techniques I use for telling people how to train confidence, because yeah, you are faced with a new situation, and as a business owner you're constantly faced with new situations you haven't encountered or mastered before. But if you trust in your ability to connect to people, have a strong network, figure things out, be a quick learner, whatever it is for you, that's the thing you can trust, right?
Exactly.
So I think it's such an interesting story. That's why I wanted you to share it, because I think a lot of people uh, can connect to that idea of, I've done all the right things. Why doesn't it make me happy?
Yeah,
Why
why
doesn't
does
it
it feel
fulfill?
good? Like, why am I not there yet? Like, shouldn't I have figured this out by now?
Yeah, yeah. So, what would you say to someone in you meet, like just socially, another woman, maybe probably in her mid 30s, maybe earlier, maybe later 40s, who says like, ah, man, I have this great job, great title, great pay, but ugh, it doesn't sit right with me.
I mean, that's always a tough question because you
Mhm.
can't force someone to do something that they're not ready for,
No.
especially if they're not emotionally ready for it,
Mhm.
right? So those are areas where I'm like, I would just encourage them to really like, well, if you're not happy or content here, like maybe there's some other things that you can explore. Like, what is the driver behind that? What is the thing that you're missing, right? There are a lot of safe ways for you to explore those things. And I'm not saying you need to like go deep into the woo woo or any of that stuff, but maybe different activities, different clubs, different events, things like that, just to kind
Mhm.
of see like, can I find a place where it all kind of clicks for me, and let that be the guide for like the next thing and the next thing as you evolve and prepare for what it is you do want.
Right. And I love that because it's a little more playful than what, of course, most of us are taught.
Yes.
And yeah, nobody wants you to just give up your well-paid corporate job right away and just jump into something, leap off the cliff into the unknown and entrepreneurship. But as you playfully explore options and make a little more time for exploring, that might be the thing, or it might not. It might not. So that's the great approach. And I have to, before we go into the business thing, you just mentioned you don't have to go deep into the woo, but I know that as much of a badass, straight-laced businesswoman you are, you love to sometimes go deep into the woo.
Oh, I am deep, deep, deep in the woo, let me tell you. I enjoy it, right? Like, you don't have to do it, but I personally enjoy it. I found, like, a connection there where it's like, "Oh, I see a lot of, maybe I don't wanna say, like, oh, I found the meaning of my life," but I see a lot of connections in, like, a lot of the spiritual elements
Mhm.
as I've dove into that part of personal development to, "Oh, how it's all played out in kind of my life and guided me to where I am today. So I'm a believer
Mhm.
and I love all the things like the tarot, the astrology, the human design, the Reiki, the energy, all the things. I love all that stuff. And I think it definitely adds to my exploration,
Mhm.
right? Like the beginning, it was like, let me just try these things out. Let me just see. And then as I've evolved, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, there's this part of spirituality that I'm really, really interested in that really lights me up. So let me just follow that and see where it goes.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, because I just want to encourage people to explore whatever speaks to them, right? And that there's no, I know growing up in Germany, and I know that it's been similar for many of my friends who, especially those who either grew up in Asia or with Asian parents. We get a lot of messaging around, this is what you believe in, this is what you do, this other thing, ignore that won't lead you to your goal. And in Germany it's even like, we distinguish literature by serious and entertaining, and entertaining cannot be taken seriously by that definition,
Yeah.
right? So which is a catastrophe, because I mean, if someone can write entertainment well, woo, that's a huge skill. And the same with those things that might speak to us but we can't explain them.
Yeah,
So what?
exactly.
You can be a kick-ass businesswoman and still draw your tarot card in the morning first thing. That's perfectly fine, whatever works for you. um, if you're watching this live, I would love for you to chime in. I cannot, because something is a little wrong on my end, I cannot comment on LinkedIn here right now. So if someone is missing, if Joanna is still missing the link, maybe whoever else is on the live stream right now can share the link again. I tried to, but I can't. So, but please share with us what your thoughts are, and we'll move on to where you are today. Because again, we called this session "Systemizing Confidence," and I think that's a very interesting approach, because I talk a lot about how confidence is trainable, transferable. So your piece really fits in there well, that you can systemize confidence. So, what does that term mean for you?
So for me, like, so when we think about confidence, it means that you are certainty, right? Like there's like a sureness to what you're doing, what your next step is. That's what I really think about with confidence. And a lot of times in my experience, we don't know what to do next, or we are uncertain about what the path is, or how am I supposed to do this task, this project? How am I supposed to, make it into that managerial position? Whatever it is, we don't understand the how, right? So that gives us a lot of uncertainty. And that's where I feel like there's a tendency to pull back and have that lack of confidence because you don't know, right?
Mhm.
And in that uncertainty, that's where you are able to build the structure, right? So when I think about systemizing confidence, I'm like, okay, well, when you know what to do next, when you have a process to follow, that automatically brings a certain amount of confidence and certainty to what you're doing. So when you think about something that you are doing at work, right? So when you think about the first time that you had to manage someone, or the first time you were in charge of a project or something like that, you know, did you feel confident doing it right out of the gate, right? You generally, like I know for me personally, I wouldn't feel super confident because I just don't know what to expect. I'm not entirely sure who all the players are. What if I do it wrong? There are all those questions that lead to the uncertainty, and that makes me kind of shrink back. And I feel like that happens to a lot of other business owners who are just like, well, I don't really know what to expect. So I'm just going to hang back and kind of see how it unfolds. And then when you have, like, hey, you have a mentor or you have someone working alongside with you saying, hey, this is what it should look like. This is what the progression could be in this scenario. Would you show up differently if you're like, hey, Micha, you're going to be in charge of this project, and these are all the things that you need to do, and here's around how you should do it? How would you show up to something like that, right? When you have the process laid out for you, it's a lot easier to show up with confidence and being like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm in control of this. I can manage this with more expertise. I can show up in it with confidence, right? That's where, to me, it comes down to like, you can create a process around your confidence when you go into like, well, what are the things that make me uncertain, and suss out the steps to really, well, okay, so if I could talk to someone, if I could do some research, or if I could connect with other mentors around the space or around this type of project or task or business, whatever it is, there is a higher propensity that you will feel a little more confident going into whatever that task, project, event, business is. So for me, that's what I think about when I say systemize your confidence, because you can create that process for yourself, right? Whenever you do feel uncertain.
Yeah. I love that, because it is really, you personally work with business owners and help them scale, but systemizing confidence, as you just mentioned in other examples, is also something that works for people who work in corporate, or maybe are still, I mean, is this something that solopreneurs need to think of especially?
It's something that I talk about a lot, because it's something that I see is
Mhm.
missing with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners, right? When you get into business, you don't know what to expect.
Mhm.
So do you feel confident like, hey, I'm going to be able to crush this? I'm going to be able to scale. I'm going to make multi six figures and beyond pretty immediately. I know what to do with the marketing. I know exactly what I'm doing, like things like that, right? You don't know. And you're still trying to figure it out along the way. And so no matter how great your skill set is, when you go into an arena where you're not sure of what the rules are, what the expectations are, what your next steps are, it's pretty default that you're going to fall into a position where you're just like, okay, well, I'm going to hang back. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Mhm.
And like just
Mhm.
shrink yourself. So with a lot of business owners that I see, even when they've made a lot of money, right? They maybe have not been in that leadership position before, so they don't really know how to lead their teams, and that's where they find a lot of I don't know, uncertainty, like the lack of
Mhm.
confidence in their ability to grow any further than that, because they're like, I don't know what it's going to take. I feel like I just kind of fell into this and I don't know what to do now, right? And that's a lot of what I see with my clients when they're like, well, everything I know how to do, I've done by myself or with this very small team. I don't know how to take myself out of it.
Yeah.
And that causes a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty in them. But once we map out, like, okay, if if you want to run your business in 25 hours a week or less, and you have a VA and nothing else, right? What needs to happen in order
Mhm.
for you to get to that 25 hours a week or less while maintaining your revenue? Okay, well, let's map it out. Let's lay out what needs to happen and how to do it. And when we do that, I find that my clients come back with like 10x confidence, where they're like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, yeah, I know what to do. I know where we're going. I know the steps that I'm going to take. So when they show up and they're in their business and they're executing on those things, they show up and execute with confidence, because they know with certainty, like, okay, I'm taking the right steps, I'm doing the right things, my energy, my focus is in the right place. And a lot of the uncertainty of like, oh, well, should I do this? Should I do that? Is this going to be the right way? Or like, could I do it this way? Or how would these pieces work together? All of those questions kind of go away, right? So that's where it comes into like, well, what's the process for you to get comfortable, for you to understand and kind of put your hands around the uncertainty, right? Is it, having conversations with others? Is it hiring a coach? Is it hiring a mentor, looking for advisory, looking for consulting? What are those things that will help you manage the uncertainty and build your own pathway so that you have security and certainty and you can show up more confidently in your business, in your career, wherever it is, right? Those are the things that I'm really looking at and working with when I see business owners, when I'm working with, entrepreneurs.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. There's so much to unpack in that. We can unpack some of these things. It speaks to me a lot, because I mean, I needed to make room to start this coaching business by taking myself out of, or somewhat back from my first business, which is a communications agency. And I've mastered it. Took quite a while. But that is something I feel that has to do also, it has to do with the systems, and it also has a lot to do with trust. So you already mentioned VA teams, mentors. How do you work with people who have a hard time learning to trust, which leads to delegation and those things, right? I mean, trust is an important aspect, not only self trust but also learning to trust others.
So I think trust also comes down to lack of process, where you don't know what to expect. You don't know what's going to happen, and you
Mhm.
don't know what the end result is going to be. So it's hard to trust that anything you give to someone else is going to have the same results as you, right? Because there's a lot of things that I know that I do as a business owner that I'm sure that other people, whether business owners or professionals, are doing where it's automatic because you have done it multiple times, right? You've been in that project, you've been in that meeting, you've given that presentation, you've pitched that client or did that sales call or whatever it is. So you have a certain level of experience. So the uncertainty is no longer there. But once you have to give that to someone else and you
Mhm.
don't have a process around it, you're just like, oh, well, I know how to do it. So why don't you know how to do it? Those are places where you're like, okay, well, is it reasonable for me to
Mhm.
think that someone is going to know exactly how I like to sell or do a sales call without giving them process and structure that guarantees, hey, this is what the end result is going to be, or that we're moving them this
Yeah.
person to the next step. So when I think about, hey, I can't trust someone around me, it's probably because you don't have enough process around what you're doing, and you don't have the right process to guarantee that end result, right? And that's what you need to transfer. That's the knowledge that needs to be transferred. It's not just like here's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps that I do to execute, my marketing or whatever. No, it is the strategic steps that you take to guarantee the end result, that your marketing looks the same and is consistent every single time, right? And that's what people miss out on, and that's where they struggle to, well, I had a bad experience, no one on my team can do it as well as I can, or I have to do it because I get the best results. Well, you can transfer those things if you have the right process, and a lot of people are not really thinking about that process. So for me, like, a lot of process, a lot of systems really builds trust and confidence at the end of the day, because you know what to expect and you know what the end results are going to be when you have the right crafted process.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely all of that. Super true as icon, all of that. If you are listening to this, watching this, and you're like, no, that's not my problem. My problem is really, it's all in the knowledge is all in my head. And I have been there. I tell you, I've been there, and I still have those days where I feel like, "Ah, I should just do it myself. That's faster."
Yes.
Um, and
And
that's when I've learned to catch myself. That's the one. Sometimes I still fall for it, but that's the point where some kind of knowledge transfer through a system has to take place, right? Because otherwise, I will always be the one.
yes. So if you're like, "Oh, it's just like 5 seconds, I'll just do it." Well, then you will always do it. No
Yeah.
one will ever be able to do it for you. And even I found, like, what you said really resonated with me, where it's like, "Well, I have it all in my head. I know the process." Well, you know the process, but you haven't done anything to transfer that process, right? If it's all in your head, there are things that you do, like, automatically. That's not a process. That's something that you do, right? A process or a system is outside of yourself, so that anyone who is doing that or who sees it can execute it and get the same results that you do. That's what a real system is within your business, right?
Yeah.
So that's the stuff where it's like, oh, if it's in your head, then it's not really a system. You got to put it somewhere else so that you can delegate it and give it to someone and know that they're going to get the same results when they execute those steps as you do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a high benchmark. So that's where experts like yourself come in. So how do you get people started on getting their knowledge into a system? How would when they come to you and you have your initial conversation or conversations, what's the first step you take, you should send them back home with?
It depends, really. Like, so I'm going to give you the consulting answer. It depends.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, of course. Yeah.
It depends on the client and kind of where their challenges are. But I say the most part, we start everything with the activity, like a time study and activity inventory. So that we at least know, like, I feel like, my experience, what I see with a lot of businesses are like, I think my time goes here. Or I'm spending a lot of time doing marketing, or I'm spending a lot of time with my clients, but we don't really know,
Mhm.
right? What's going on. And so we start with a time study to really map out, like, okay, what are the real gaps and where are you really spending your time,
Yeah.
so that you can actually see with consistency, like, oh, I just don't I think I'm spending a lot of time in marketing because I don't know how to do it. So I'm just spending, like, I'm just, researching a whole bunch or whatever, right? But actually my time and my energy, the volume and the focus is really with my clients. Those are things that you can suss out and begin to develop processes from. And that's, I think, the first thing that we will always do. Like across the board, we do it with everyone just to get that like benchmark of like, where are you actually starting today versus where you are telling me or you think that you're starting? Because sometimes, well, actually, frequently, they're very different points. And once you have the data behind it, you're like, actually, you only spend 5 hours with your clients a week. So is that really a drain for you?
Mhm.
Is that really an area that needs a lot of process? Because you probably already know what you're doing there. Should we tackle areas where there are bigger gaps, bigger challenges first?
Yeah, yeah. And I like the idea of a time audit because I think we all realize that uh, things we enjoy and that get us in flow, time flies by. We can do them for hours and hours. And then there are these other things that we consider a drag because they're just not in our wheelhouse, or yeah, for whichever either expertise reasons or just dislike. I mean, that's fine, right? And an hour feels forever. And there are so many people out there who say, oh, marketing takes me forever. I bet they are not spending forever on marketing. It just feels that way because it's such a drag.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. And Kathy is raising an interesting point. So she's sharing, I've been fortunate to find a VA who understands and shares my values, especially around selling. She does things I don't know how to do or don't have the time for it. And I would add, maybe don't like to do, right? That's okay too. Being aligned has helped create trust, and that drives our success. So I know that you are a superstar at helping people hire the right first person, which usually these days is a VA. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Maybe because Kathy said she was fortunate, but again, you have a system.
Yeah, and, like, I love that, Kathy, you found a great VA who shares your values. That is an important factor, when I am considering, like, okay, well, what is the right VA? Or when I guide my clients in terms of their hiring, values are really important, right? And so I love this part where you're like, you've been fortunate in the first part, like, it's a gamble. Like, I could have been unfortunate as well,
Mhm.
right? Like, it's a 50-50 shot. And what I usually find is, like, when you have the process for sussing out the right person, when you know exactly how you're going to plan that hire, you know how you're going to design the role, you know what you're going to delegate and what that VA is going to do before you even start looking, you can hone in on the perfect fit before you even start the search. So you're not wasting time on the people who are like, oh, well, I have 100 candidates, so let me just kind of like look at everyone. No, we're not doing that. I want to look at the fewest candidates who fit most of the criteria that I'm looking for, right? So we really have created a process around like guaranteeing, like I want a perfect fit VA every single time I hire
Mhm.
someone. I don't want to like roll the dice and hope for the best. I want to make sure that I'm removing a lot of the uncertainty and that I'm cutting through a lot of that noise. And that's what I teach my clients how to do when they are hiring as well, right? So let's guarantee that you're
Mhm.
going to find that perfect fit. Well, okay, we can't guarantee anything, but we practically guarantee that you're going to find a perfect fit every single time you go through a hiring cycle because we have the process to screen out and remove any people who are not going to be a good fit so that you don't waste time talking to people who like don't check all the boxes or most of the boxes. And if somebody does happen to get through a screen, you'll know very quickly and you're not burning tons of time trying to find that right person, right? Or you're like, oh, I just burned. I know I've had clients in the past where I'm like, I don't really, my PA and I are not really clicking, but I don't really know if it's me or if it's them. And they continue to pay them for 3, 6, 9 months, a year. And they're like, I don't really give them anything big, but like, I really need the help. And I'm like, you like, those are things that we should have nipped in the bud, right? Like,
Mhm.
you don't need
Mhm.
to ever be in a position where you're like, oh, I don't know. I don't really feel like I'm getting the support. I'm walking on eggshells, things like that. So that's where the process really comes in to make sure you're like, hey, I know exactly how I'm going to do this to screen out all the people who are not a great fit. So I'm only talking to the cream of the crop. Like when my clients go through a hiring cycle, they are usually only talking to the top 3 or 4 candidates. So they're not
Mhm.
wasting time on tons of interviews because we've screened all of the applicants before that and they have the process to do that really quickly. And usually those out of the 3 or 4, they have a perfect fit that they end up working with
Right.
for a pretty long period of time, right? So that's kind of where you focus in on the process.
Yeah, I want to go back to what Kathy said. It was a gamble because it was an early move. Yeah, in the beginning, you just don't know better, right? I was stuck in a process and asked on the side for help, and she stepped up. I didn't know all the things I didn't need. Hmm. I think that's the early business owner situation. I didn't know what I didn't know. Yeah, the classic. So I was lucky. Kathy, I'm very, very glad that you were lucky, because most people, yeah, we don't know what we don't know, and I feel, especially for new business owners, um, we don't distinguish a lot between that. Um, what is often in the big leap is called the zone of excellence and zone of genius, and we all know these, oh, if you love what you do, you won't work a day in your life, and all that stuff, and it's muddling the waters, because uh, there are people who enjoy, I don't know, finances, there are people who enjoy admin, there are people who enjoy marketing, selling, consulting, whatever. But we feel like we need to do it all. And I feel that's a bit of a women's issue, particularly. Men are more encouraged to go for this one thing or whatever they identify. Uh, am I wrong with finding that that might be a bit more of a women thing? That I need to do it all, I need to be good at it, I need to take
Uh,
care of everything and everybody?
I think that yes, especially to take care of everything and everybody, I got to be able to do it all is
Mhm.
a challenge that I hear, and I do think that it is something that is ingrained in a lot of women. It's kind of come down in our social structures that hey, as a woman, you're supposed to be able to like have the career, you're supposed to have the house, you're supposed to have the family, and all those things in order to quote unquote have it all. And traditionally, I will say that my from my point of view that men don't have that same pressure. They're like
Mhm.
historically or traditionally have been like, oh well, you go get a job, you provide for your family, and a lot of that pressure isn't really there. And so I think that does impact what a woman is expected to do and how she's expected to show up and how much she can quote unquote have or what she has to do to have it all. And I don't think we really think about it or talk about it enough. And I know that's something that's played out a lot in my own career, right? Where it's like I did all the right things. I did all the things that my
Mhm.
parents told me to do. And sometimes those things didn't really help me get ahead. A lot of like kind of those kind of immigrant first generation child mindset things where they didn't really help me because I'd be in places where it's like I'm just going to keep my head down. I'm going to work really, really hard, and that's going to be enough to catapult me forward and help me rise in the ranks. And that's not true here, right?
Mhm.
You have to really be able to be an individual and speak your voice and have that same focus. And I don't want to say like play like the boys, but to a certain element in certain industries you really have to do that. I think like with you, or you're working with a lot of women in tech, a lot of women in engineering and the car industries, traditionally male dominated fields. You're like you got to push to play with the boys, but you're also expected to be
Mhm.
all the female things, like the traditional female things. And I think that that's a hard balance for women within kind of any field, whether it's entrepreneurship or professional fields.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. So the most important thing, please, if you're listening to that, if you're watching that, ask for help. So if you just start by asking a friend a little thing and building up, because so many people have trouble asking for help. Yeah? So start with the little things that have a low threshold where it's easier to start for help before you go for the big guns where it's really hard, where you're terrified to ask for help. And if you're a business owner and what Diane says resonates with you, please reach out to her. Kathy just commented, I know people who need you. Send them Diane's way. She has a lot of different offerings. Um, and she will be able to help with hiring, but also with other systemizing a lot of things. So maybe before we wrap it up, um, would you tell us a little bit about what your current service offering is?
Yeah, so I think that, what we talk about today is, with a lot of business owners, a lot of online entrepreneurs, they haven't really been in those leadership positions, right? And I will tell you from experience, leading a team in corporate versus leading your own team in your business is very different. When you are quote unquote responsible for the people on your team, it feels different, it hits different, you make like different decisions. Like, my when I first started doing it, it's like my mindset was like very, very focused and very
Mhm.
myopic, right? Um, So I really focus on helping my clients not only build their tech and their operational systems foundation, but also developing their leadership so that they can, know the answers for what they need to do right now, today, to scale their business, but also they can figure out the answers for themselves in the future. So a lot of our work centers around, okay, I'm going to help you design the perfect tech stack. I'm going to help you design, the systems for your core functions, but I'm also going to tell you why we make these decisions. And I'm going to have you be a part of these conversations and a part of the implementation so that you, as a business owner, have that leadership that you can take with you and that experiential knowledge that really creates confidence when you go on and you're like on your own and like you run into the same problem when you hit your next revenue milestone, right? A lot of the challenges that we have as business owners recycle as you hit new levels, new peaks, and you have to be able to navigate those on your own. And you could do it through, all right, I'm going to try it, mess up, test it, build it again, test it again, break something, and all of those things through all that trial and error. But I really focus on helping them understand the why. Why are you doing this? How does it really fit in? And why is it important to you and your business in achieving your goals so that they can then go on and do it on their own down the road tomorrow when we tackle systems challenges or we tackle team challenges or we're tackling tech decisions. They have a baseline to conceptualize, like, okay, this is the context that I can review this technology in or this team member or this system in, because we've gone through that. I've taught them what are the things that you really need to be looking out for your specific business, and this is how it connects to that goal, right? And that's where I see they're able to be a lot more successful over the long run, where they're able to really let go and trust and have confidence as a leader when they show up in their business, and they're able to scale a lot faster, honestly.
Yeah. And at that point, if they've worked with you, they might already have the perfect, the unicorn VA on board or team member, whatever that person is. So
They usually have a team of unicorns at that point, because it's really about, you will always need more than one VA, right?
yeah,
Like, if you are going to stay in business, you're never going to do it with just one VA. You're probably going to need more, especially as you scale, right? Like if you're just like, hey, I'm happy with where I'm at, this is what the business is going to be for the entirety of my business, 100% you can stay with your VA. But I think a lot of business owners are focused on growth. And if you want to grow and you want to hit other revenue milestones, you want to go to multi six figures and beyond, you're probably going to need more than one team member. You're going to need more technology. You're going to need processes around it, right? So understanding that, you don't have to do it, but you have to understand it to be able to be a leader, to really step in that CEO seat. And that's where I think the magic really happens. And that's what I'm really helping my clients with.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We share a mission on helping women lead with confidence. So I'm very excited that you shared all these things with people. So please reach out to Diane, reach out to me. If you have any questions, let us know. If you see the replay, we will monitor that. VAs will monitor that, and, and we'll get back to you. So happy to answer questions afterwards too. And connect with Diane, get on a connect call to find out more about what she does. And Diane, you know that already. My last question, my favorite question: what advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
Oh gosh, there's so much advice, right? Oh God. I think that a lot of it comes down to yourself. It's like, and I know for me, one of my big challenges has been really like feeling confident in my own decisions and in what I feel is right. And, being pressured, like having a lot of outside pressures, a lot of family pressure to do a certain way thing or be a certain way or act or show up a certain way. So I would tell my 16-year-old self, what they say doesn't fucking matter. Like, in the big scheme of things, the only person that you're here to really, that you have to prove anything to yourself is yourself. You don't have to prove anything to anyone but yourself. And if you're happy with where you're at, then
Amen.
fine, right?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. We're closing with that because it's so, so important. Thanks again for sharing your expertise, your wisdom. And Kathy says, this was helpful and expanded my thinking. Yay, that's what we want to do here. So thanks for being here, Diane. And next
Thank
week,
you.
that's the last episode before summer break. Then I'll be back with these interviews after Labor Day. Next week, I'm talking to Lawrence Aslansky Connor, who is the COO and co-founder of Gathering Us, an online community that brings communities together after the death of a loved one.
Oh,
And I connected with her over the topic of emotions at work because I recently had the honor of facilitating a panel, moderating a panel on that topic for Women in Tech Regatta. And so we got into a conversation, and she has so many things to say about that, being also ex corporate and now working in this grief space. Kathy, that's an interesting one for you too. So that's what we are talking about next week. Watch out for it. It will be the same time, Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific. That's all we have for you today. Again, thanks, Diane. It was great talking to you. Always a pleasure, always fun.
thank
And
you. I'll see
see
you
you
next
soon.
time. Bye.